So if someone's listening to this and they're like, all right, I'm curious, I want to know more, I think I might like to try this sometime, what would you recommend other than what we've already spoken about, like getting some tools? What would you tell people if they want to explore this for themselves?
Well, there's so many choices these days in how and where and who to sit with Aya. So then I would suggest doing a process of self-discovery. Like, do you want, a small group with intimate connection to the shaman in somebody's living room? Because there are lots of those. Do you want to go have the full-scale big retreat, which is multiple ceremonies? And I also do, master plant diets and wachuma and different medicines with that. Or do you want to kind of dip your toe in and try a ceremony and see how it feels? Because it's not just saying yes to ayahuasca. There's a million different ways to experience her. But the way that I suggest people do it is to use the notion of safety as a guideline. What feels safe to you? Are you ready for the big guns and to go full throttle and to do 4 ceremonies in a week? And but you don't have to if you're not. So to feel what's safe as a next step to jumping into this world.
And if someone's like, oh, look, that sounds great, but what do you mean? Like, what do you mean does it feel safe to me?
Yeah, it's a feeling in our bodies, isn't it? And so if we're disconnected from that, it's hard to know. So I would say conjure up a memory of when you felt safe. Sometimes for people, it's laying in a hammock by an ocean, or a river or whatnot. There's a physical connection. We felt safe somewhere along the way, even if it was for a fleeting second. But to find that and to use that vibration, that feeling as a compass for when you imagine like going to sit in a retreat, going to the jungle, that's my happy place with the medicine, but not everybody, right? And that might be too much. But to just try to follow intuition, not mind, which I realize is a lovely concept and can be very difficult. But, it's a good practice to what the medicine's going to teach us anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a few years ago, none of this would have made any sense. I'd be the person be like, what do you mean? Like intuition, safety, this is whatever. Like I need the logical explanation, Whereas that's what I got out of the plants have accelerated it, but all the somatic stuff where it's like, okay, like orient to the safety in the environment, look around and see if it's actually safe where you are, then you start to feel safe. And someone starts to get to know what safety then feels like. They can use that. And then intuition for me was like, what? It just sounds so spiritual, so woo, fluffy or something. Whereas now, like the way I see it is, again, in the somatic stuff, they talk about following impulse. So when we want to go to the bathroom, we don't have to think about it. It's a sensation in our body. We feel it. Or if we're hungry, we just it's undeniable. We're just hungry. If we're tired. So we have these somatic cues of telling us what we need to do to survive, to stay alive. And, the practice for me is, or a way to learn intuition is to tune into some of that. And then the better we get at hearing those those more obvious impulses, the subtle stuff starts to, now I can kind of feel like this retreat versus that, with this person versus that person.
Here's a great way to practice that we all do it, but most of us aren't conscious of it, is when we're at the grocery store and we're reaching for an apple and we sort of pivot and go, that apple. That's exactly what's happening, is we're listening to an intuition. That isn't logic. It's like, that one. But to make that more conscious, because we're animals. We do that. The animal kingdom does this constantly. So do we. We're just not conscious of it. Bring your awareness there, because it's happening all the time. And to catch yourself when you're like, I think I'm going to turn right here instead of going straight. That's intuition.
Yeah. And so the more you focus on it and start to be aware of it, the more it grows. It's like, I've been waiting. It's like it's waiting there for you all along.
Thanks for paying attention to me. Yes, exactly.
Finally.
Welcome to the party.
Takes time. Like it's, I'm still learning. But one interesting one for me has been noticing when I like someone or don't like them. And, in the past, I grew up, in a religious family. You got verses like turn the other cheek, be nice to everyone, all this, always be forgiving and compassionate, this kind of stuff. And it got me into some pretty serious trouble by not detecting dangerous people in the plant world, actually. in Thailand. And over time, I've started to go, okay, so if I don't like someone, that's usually my, not always, but a lot of the time, that's my system picking up on like some cues. Maybe I'm not conscious of them yet, but it's noticing things. And there's a reason why I don't like them, why I feel like, I don't trust that person. And on the other hand, if I really like someone, I feel like that's the same kind of a thing. It's like the body saying, spend more time with this person. Like there's something there to learn, to grow, to, yeah.
And so there's a tricky way of working with this, though, because I fully honor that's wisdom coming through. But what the mind wants to do, or I should say the ego, is to make that an unequivocal truth. Like, that person's bad. I don't like that person. And to write a big story instead of just going, that's true for me. That doesn't feel good for that person. And to not have that temptation to be righteous all of a sudden and to think we know everything, but to honor it, and calling it intuition helps with that. Of like, my intuition says that's not my person. Cool. You know, we don't have to make them bad or wrong because that's true, but we don't have to make ourselves wrong either, which is what a lot of us do. Of like, oh, I'm supposed to be a good person. I'll just ignore what feels right in my body. Yeah, that doesn't go well.
Yeah. What's interesting, taking out, like, you just take out the mind side of it. Like the mind makes these like universal judgments, black and white. These people are bad. These are good, and there's always going to be like that. Whereas the impulse or intuition thing, it's only a present moment thing. It's only right now. It's not, can't tell you what's going to happen later, or even what happened in the past. It's only right now. That person could change. Lots of things could happen, and so it, like all these stories, they're all built in time, and so that gets rid of all that stuff, and it's all about right now.
Exactly. And that's you're right. That's the danger of believing the mind. Is the mind spins a story, but the mind is never anchored in the present moment. It's in the past or the future. It's telling stories. Whereas the body and the intuition is right here, right now. Yeah.
What have you have you had any interesting, I'm sure you have, any interesting stories about your mind in ceremony that's happened? Anything funny?
Oh my God. Sure. I mean, I have watched my body respond to the stories that my mind tells, and then made that correlation so many times of like the seat of suffering is in the mind, you know, like pain is present moment energy of like, oh, I stubbed my toe, that hurts. Suffering is the mind's story around it. Oh my God, I'm never going to walk again. And like, you know, just, but how tempting it is to fall for that. So I still have ceremonies 20 years in where I watch myself, my consciousness get sucked into the fear that my mind says, and then to correct and to pivot and be like, that's a story. No, I'm not going to believe that. But the way the body responds, it's fascinating how fast we fall for a hypothetical situation that the mind creates as if it were real, and it creates suffering.
And it's so quick, and it feels like this is reality. This is what's happening. This is not just my mind.
Oh, you're sure of it.
This is the truth. Yeah.
I have been sure that an earthquake just happened and everybody out in the world was dead. Like, because I felt a little shake. I'm like, oh my God, it's the apocalypse. I've been sure of it. You know, I've been sure that I've gone